Guys, we are back on the pod in a different setting with the famous Luke Blue-Eyed BC. Now, if you don't know who he is, where have you been? Welcome.
Wow. Well, welcome.
Guys, so the famous Blue-Eyed BC on the Resilience Pod at the night before the BCI World.
Yes.
How are you doing?
Not bad, not bad. It's been a busy news week
Yeah.
for me personally, but some key sort of career milestones ticked off the list. But yeah, it's been a long time actually since has anyone referred to me as Blue-Eyed BC as in that Twitter handle that's been around for a while when I was talking about grassroots grassroots stuff in business continuity. But it's nice to know it's still out there.
Yeah, and he exists. So if you've seen all his social media posts or his blog, which it's been a while, you were quite anonymous first, weren't
Yes,
you?
yeah.
So we've got the real Luke here, and I'm excited to quiz you. So we don't have the mood book today, but Luke's going to tell us how he's feeling anyway.
Well, I'm feeling happy. I'm down in London. I'm going to get my first 8 hours sleep that I've had in 4 years because my children do not sleep. But yeah, no, I'm excited to meet everybody down here and ask some difficult questions and be a sort of positive disruptor while I'm down here.
I mean, that's no surprise, is it?
No, that's pretty much what I've made a career out of so far, to be honest.
So there you go.
Yeah.
Do enjoy this episode because we've got some interesting questions to ask him. So be happy, Luke.
I'll be happy.
Okay, Luke, back to basics. Forward, rewind rather, a couple of years. Your first job, what was it?
Wow. So there's a story behind this, right? I went to university to do I went to do emergency planning and disaster management, and one of the first modules in the course was to go away out to an outreach course in Wales to do mountain rescue and leadership.
Oh.
And so I went to get all my gear, and I walked into the shop nearby the university, and there was a graduate guy there, and he seen me looking for my sleeping bag and my waterproofs, and he was like, "Are you on the disaster management course?" And very bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. And he said, "Get out of it now. There's no jobs in emergency planning and business continuity." He says, "I'll work here." And I just graduated, and I was like, "Oh no!" So I had a huge panic attack. I know, I had a huge panic attack, and then I went straight home. And then, pretty much for about a solid 6 months, I called every single local authority, fire service, police station. Give me some work, free work. I'll do it for free. I'll drive to you. I'll do anything.
Really? Okay.
And eventually, there was a couple of guys. Andy Marshall, who's now at Rolls-Royce as a resilience space there, and also Pete Jones from the Staffordshire Fire Service did the Staffordshire Civil Contingencies Unit, which is a mouthful.
Yes.
And basically, they gave me a summer internship, and they needed some work done on one of their major incidents plans relating to mass fatality.
Wow.
And they made me, they asked me to, and I willingly obliged because I needed the CV, call around every single funeral parlour and every single mortuary in the county to find out what their storage capacities and processes were. And that sounds terrible, doesn't it? But it actually was okay, because the biggest challenge of that job was to call up people cold and say, "Hi, it's Luke from the Staffordshire Civil Contingencies Unit." And they'd say, "Who?" The Staffordshire Civil Contingencies Unit.
Okay.
I did that about 300 times to get data.
And you're doing this for free?
And I did that for free,
Okay.
and then off the back of that, they let me go to a few local resilience forum groups, and I met some people, and then off the back of that, I got a local community hospital said, "Luke, you're very proactive. Can you want to come and do we're good with the major incident plans. Would you like to do our business continuity plans?" And I did, and then the rest is history, really.
And that's how it started.
Yeah.
So actually, that's quite cool because someone saying to you, "There's no jobs in emergency," and just put you right into action.
Yeah, it was interesting at the university though, because I came to university only a couple of years later, and I found that everybody just seemed to expect that they were going to walk into sort of 80 grand jobs right away.
Oh, right.
Like, not get out of bed for anything less than that. And it seemed a bit bizarre to me because I had a brief foray into the Navy. All I ever wanted to do was be in the Royal Navy when I was a little boy, and Sea Cadets and Scouts and everything. And that as soon as I got there and got beyond all the basic training, I quickly realised that wasn't where I was meant to be. And so I came out and had to restart again. So I was a couple of years behind my mates. When I started uni, my pals had all graduated. So I had a couple of years insight, and the fear of failing after university because of that actually made me think twice. I was very proactive throughout my entire degree. I think I clocked up in a 3.5 year course. I clocked up about 18 months worth of internship time.
Wow.
I just did not stop. It took every opportunity around.
I mean, that's pretty impressive, and actually leads me to a question I was going to ask you a bit later on, is tips for newbies who are actively either studying this field or who haven't but want to shift into it. Something similar to what you've done, where you've been really proactive. Is that something?
It's a good question, and I bet it's on the tips of the tongues of every single junior professional currently going through their undergraduates and postgrads.
Yeah.
I presented to Coventry University and Glasgow Caledonia University a couple of times, and I've had a few others, students from other programmes reach out to me more recently. And that's the same question I get asked all the time, is like, what do I do? Well, how do I get into this? And I can give a piece of advice, but it has to be a caveat with that. And it's first advice is be proactive, get out there. No one's going to help your career more than yourself. Make a disruption, much like yourself in what you're doing right now.
Yeah.
You have to be a positive disruption to the industry to contribute. You're not always going to like what they say back to you, and a part of this journey for me personally is I've had some very difficult conversations and some negative press off the back of it, but I found that you have to put yourself out there but also deal with the consequences of it.
Yeah.
And that seems to be, and this is where the caveat comes in, this seems to be the stumbling block for a lot of junior professionals. The fear of looking like foolish or stupid or being in the wrong place, it might be career limiting. That's a real, and that's not just unique to BC or resilience or anything. That's a common. Like, I met a guy recently, and just a networking session, and I said, "How you doing?" He's like, "Busy." I was like, "Are you?" And he goes, "Well, I've got to say that, haven't I?" After a few beers, he said, and I was like, "Well, do you have to say you're busy? Like, really? Why is it already at a graduate phase? Are we already learning to
be busy,
sort of flatter and deceive about what it is that we're doing?" But yeah, so if you can, be big and brave and put yourself out there, put yourself in front of the screen, hide yourself behind an anonymous blog for a few years and then come out.
You'll be famous. So
you've really got to do it. I think that's the key.
Yeah, and then there comes a time where you'll happily expose yourself. So it's always a good thing.
Yeah, people. Yeah. The curiosity of being anonymous, of course, is that it's especially the sort of more experienced professionals. Definitely wanted to know who I was. Who's this person saying things, and that was more than what I was saying actually to start with. But eventually when I came out to the world and said this is me, it really did split down the middle. There was a half of the community that were listening at the time were saying, "Oh, finally, someone said it. Someone's the representative younger voice in the community." The other half were saying, "This guy doesn't know what he's talking about. He hasn't met the right people. He hasn't had the right conversations. I wasn't political enough." So that's a challenge that I've faced, and which you may well face yourself if you decide to go the same way. But we're in a different world now.
Yeah, we are.
People are much more braver than they were previously. So maybe it was just our little window, and everyone else can progress.
Maybe, but we're yet to see that, aren't we? So
yes.
YBC blog.
Okay, yeah.
Tell us a bit more about what that is, and guys, if you don't know what that is and don't know where you've been, what prompted you to start that and then be anonymous?
I was scared.
Okay.
I was scared of looking silly and looking. There were so many. The thing about the business continuity and merchant planning industry, from even just as far as sort of 10 years ago, it was dominated by close to retired, strong white men, and it was terrifying even from a young sort of trainee in that. I mean, I am the archetype of the current situation, which needs to change massively. But it was terrifying, and so I hid behind it. I won't be ashamed to admit that, because I was very frustrated.
Okay.
I used to write some of the early stuff I used to write. When I read back, I thought, wow, Luke was very angry. But that was because I wanted the answers. I was frustrated. I felt like I couldn't get it from the institutes and the organisations that were available. And I said a lot of things just to vent to start with. There was initial venting, and then it progressed into the chaos.
Yeah. But actually, at that time, there wasn't much out there. You'd have to pay for every single bit of information you wanted on BCM. It was highly driven by consultancy work. So when we first met,
our hands were tied, weren't they?
Yeah, but I used to read your blog.
Yeah,
because I
people read
to,
it. People still buy it, and I go to universities and I give them a free copy and say, and I do get some. I have a remarkable amount of undergraduates still that reach out to me, which is quite telling. I quite enjoy that. So clearly what I experienced, regardless of sector, is part of the course. It's just a dance you've got to go through. But nobody in our space has really written it down and been as candid as perhaps I have.
Yeah, well, there's always controversy, but like your advice, I think it's good to put yourself out there and say what you think, because other people are thinking it anyway. They're just waiting for that one person.
Yeah,
and it might as well be you, because
why not?
Yeah, exactly.
I think so.
And it reaps its rewards, doesn't it? So
sometimes it does. As I say, you have to. I think the best advice I could give to anybody who's watching this just now is be prepared to be criticised, and just have an extra layer of skin. The people that are perhaps they're challenging your ideas and some of your philosophies or some of your frustrations is because they're in their own comfort zone, and they feel that the people that are quick to write a challenging comment on whatever it is you've posted, or whether it's a vlog or some LinkedIn article or something, you've got to be prepared for a couple of discerning voices. And that's a challenge, I think, for a lot of people, because we all just want to be liked at the end of the day, and you're never going to please everyone.
No, and that's not your true, authentic self, and that's what we're at the RESILIENCEPOD are all about, the realness.
Yes.
You were anonymous in this blog, Blue Eyed BC. At what point did you think, now I need to tell the world that it's me, Luke Bird?
I think it just got to a point where I was confident enough about what it was I was writing about. It started about the original journey. I mean, the ebook that I put out on Amazon is basically a collection of the most read blogs, and it takes a sort of chronological path through my initial entry into the field. It's actually like as I say, people still buy it, and people still ask for it, and you don't make amazing amounts of money on Amazon like Kindle and things like that, but it's nice to see that people are still interested. And people were curious, because it started, the journey was, I was looking for a mentor, I was looking for guidance, I was seeking help, I was frustrated. And then it moved into, actually, let's be more proactive then. What's it like to be in an incident? I'd been involved in a few hot incidents at that point, and I started to observe some of the things that happened, and I thought, if you're a new person into this field, regardless of age, you're going to find yourself having to go into these incidents. You're working in business continuity. Sooner or later, the lights are going to go out, and you're going to have to understand. And it dawned on me during a couple of different sessions when we were during live exercises and incidents when working in the hospitals, that when you see the whites of someone's eyes and the decision making, it gives you such clarity. And that gave me the confidence then to start writing about, well, what kind of incident responder are you?
Yeah.
How do you respond to these things? What's a work area recovery situation like? When all these words and terminology, I was trying to decipher it to make everything more accessible. And that's been the key theme ever since. Whatever it is we talk about, all the jargon, all the three-letter acronyms, everybody hides behind. It's all about making this stuff accessible, and that's my main key theme the entire time.
Awesome.
Yeah,
I like that. We have another award winner. I mean, it's
many
not.
have you had?
It's not. I'm not conscious.
Gather award
I know. I just hang around with award winners.
So you're a groupie, aren't you? So it is.
Yeah, it's just these famous people.
I
That
seen
follow
her
me around.
loitering outside the time when I won an award. And she's like, please be my friend.
I exposed him, and then he's willingly come on the pod. So
I am more than willing.
yeah. So you won newcomer,
Yes.
and then global
Yes.
as well. How amazing is that? So tell
That's
us a
great.
bit more about flashback to that journey. And that was when we first met as well, wasn't
Yes,
it?
it
So
was.
yeah, I remember that. Yeah, tell our audience about that experience.
I know it wasn't actually altogether that long ago.
No.
I mean, but yeah, it was. So I was nominated by a company and an external client for the global awards recognition for the BCI as a sort of, it was the best newcomer at the time, and it was mainly because of two things that were pulled out of the nomination. One was because I was the first person in my organisation to deliver on the ISO 22301 internationally.
Yeah.
So I delivered it, I got certified and been checked out by the British Standards Institute in India and in the UK, and that involved a lot of work from scratch. It was a new organisation of 2,000 people, 6 sites, and we had to have work air recovery solutions. Everything had to be documented, framework had to be set up, and they came in and checked it. The client came in and checked it to within an inch of my life. And I wrote about that journey in my Blue Eyed BC book to show people what it's like to get certified. And then that, obviously, my Blue Eyed BC side, and what we talked about already.
Yeah.
And it got really at the point in time, because I divided the audience right down the middle. It got some serious notoriety, and that's continued now. It's just got silly. I think I'm about as viral as you can get in business continuity, which isn't as exciting as it sounds.
But if you're heading that way and you want to know, it's doable. So
yeah, I put a few days ago. I don't know if anyone's seen this. Anyone's got me on LinkedIn, but I put up a picture of a donkey as part of an event I'm doing, and that got nearly 6,000 views. So just for something as silly as Eeyore. So it's it was.
Well, don't underestimate the power of your network.
Of a donkey.
Well, yeah, and that, but this is Luke we're talking about. So.
Yeah, it was. The award was fantastic.
That's
it was
great.
so humbling to get it,
Yeah.
and I was still going through a lot of pain in the career, as you do at the beginning.
Yeah.
It was so lovely to be validated, and I put so much effort into 4 or 5 years to get to that point.
Yeah, of course.
And I'm really chuffed with it, and it's definitely helped my career. If you can get nominated, and get rightly win the award, then that's just it. You just keep putting your name in the hat and go for it.
Yes, go for it. We've had some recent updates about you. So congratulations firstly on being the first ever young FBCI.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
That is cool.
It's turned a few heads as. It's probably where my voice is going from having the same conversation.
And now, is that turning heads because there's haters, or?
No, it was turning heads because then most of the older, like the white males.
Yeah.
There's only one lady on the board.
Yeah.
And there's no mixed race ethnicity, anything like that. And hopefully that will change in due course. I certainly intend to champion that. But it was. People are now a little bit nervous about who's this guy. Who's this guy who's suddenly become a fellow? Who's this guy that's sort of out 10 years earlier than anybody else?
Don't you think though? But okay, it's really great that you've got this. It's an amazing, but it will inspire other younger people who have got that 10 years plus. I mean, I know loads of people who could easily apply for it and who just haven't.
Yeah, I think it's important to realise that the BCI have just literally reviewed the approach to this, because it was a very different approach, and when you look at it carefully, actually there's a way in now. And I've actually written, it's just finished, I've got to push it out there. I've written 2,500 words on the journey, and in Luke speak, in your usual sort of everyman conversations, candid as ever. And it goes through my thought process and the actual end-to-end to make it so I want people such as yourself that are getting close to looking at this and saying, how can I do it? Because there's nothing new or unique or ahead of the game that I've done. So apart from being proactive and going back to what we talked about previously, I think there's the parameters have changed now. So it's less. Before they used to focus on your competencies and whether you were good at your job. Now they're assuming that you are good at your job. You've already got your own BCI. You've done your portfolio. Let's talk about the real stuff, which is community contributions. Like, you have hours of content of everything you're doing, so you'll be able to chalk that up in no time. Yes. But it's 150 hours or thereabouts that you have to contribute with the last sort of 20-30 hours in the last 12 months.
Okay.
Videos like this, speaking, writing, blogs, events, that sort of thing. But it focuses more on what you do out in the community, less than how many years you've got on the slate, which makes it way more accessible to everybody.
And easier in a sense, because...
Well, this is the debate. There'll be some discerning voices that say, and they won't say it officially, because I asked it during the panel session, I said, do you guys feel, because they're all FBCIs on the panel, do you guys feel that this dilutes the sort of grade a little bit, because it's opening the door to people like me that we're doing GCSEs when you were thinking about retirement?
But that's their issue, isn't it? It shouldn't be about... Traditionally, okay, there's older people, 10 years older than you, but it shouldn't be that case anymore, because people are actually studying this subject. So you studied it, like for me, I didn't study it and I came in by chance. So actually, you should have it quite rightly. Doesn't matter if you're 10 years younger
if you're
or
active.
not.
I think I think one of the things that I'm interested in, only to be fair to the BCI as well, they've everyone on the panel and anyone I've spoken to within part of that membership has explained that they're championing this. They've changed it for a reason, and to give us like a second wind, because we were all sort of, where do we go now? What's the pathway? What's the journey? And I've got to be honest, I mean, it is, like I said, the youngest to have ever achieved it in the 25-year history. It's huge. For me, it's a big boost, and you get a good buzz off it, and you think, I really want to continue to contribute. I did a lot to get to this point, but I have more to give now. And people like yourself and a number of other people, like you say, that are with us, but in the quiet majority, that if they just went for it, and I feel that they'd experience the same thing, and we could make something of it as a community.
Definitely. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
I think that is pretty awesome, and lots of inspiration for our RESILIENCEPOD viewers to hear that, and encourage you guys to do that, because if Luke can do it, I think anyone can. And plus, you're going to have a blog.
It sounds terrible, doesn't it?
It does.
But do you know what? That's true.
It's an award winner, and considering that you're actually giving people a platform, that you're telling them how it's done.
Well, you can tell me how I've done it.
Yeah, but there's no excuse not to, because this is what we're lacking in the industry, is other people's journey of how they've done it, to then it might make it easier for everybody else.
There's a gap. I would love nothing more if we could all do it. Maybe we do an anonymous sort of tale of woe or something. We put it all onto a forum together, and we can all have our own group therapy session perhaps. And,
so if you're interested, then drop me and Luke a private message.
that would be good.
Okay. Along with getting your FBCI, this week has been crazy for Luke. Tell us about your recent achievement.
Yes. So I was elected by a selection of BCI members to represent them on the global board. So I'm a global board director for them now.
Congratulations.
Thanks. Again, not to bang the drum, because one day I will be in the position, but I am considerably younger than everyone else on the board. Admittedly, I'm still male and white, which is, depending on who you ask, I personally feel that we have so much more work to do, and yet the demographic is, I feel there's a bubble in the membership community now coming upwards, and I feel that all I just need to do is, for my part, is to prick that bubble and to make as much as possible, and to make opportunities for everybody. And I do think in the next sort of 2 to 3 years, not least because I'm now representing on the board, but I do genuinely think we're just about to embark on a swathe of changes of people that we see out in the industry. It's already starting to happen already.
So I'm counting on you to make more of a difference now in representing the millennials, Generation Z, X, whatever they're called. Yeah, but we're still millennials in that sense, and just changing the dynamics of it too, because you're in that perfect position. And I guess if someone's watching and has ideas, can they approach you?
1000%, yeah. I mean, it's the board, from what I can gather, because I don't know anything yet, is always open to ideas. But I think if I was in other people's positions, I'd put myself in 5-6 years ago, I wouldn't have approached the board member and come up with an idea.
No,
it would have been terrifying.
Yeah, that's true.
So, we go back to it. If Luke can do it, anyone can do it. And that's been the key theme throughout my entire career so far, is to pitch myself against people that perhaps don't feel as confident to do what they need to do, and to break a few barriers.
Yeah.
But I do think we are going to see some big movements. I was saying to you before we recorded, I've been an active participant or advocating the Scottish Women in Technology via different forums up there, just trying to champion the women in technology that I work with.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, they've organised and emerged and done everything. But in the last couple of organisations I've worked in, some of the most sort of inspirational people I've met, most of the inspirational people I've met have been women in the last sort of 2 to 3 years.
Oh, that's awesome.
And there's just a huge, quiet but large undertone of way mixed demographics just right underneath this long line of white men. So it will change.
It will, and we're excited, and I'm excited because obviously Luke's my friend. But anyway, so
you get on there and do it with me.
I'll happily do that, and hopefully
plenty to learn now. I mean, it's one thing sort of blogging and being anonymous and being a sort of a disruptive voice in the industry, but then there's obviously the BCI now is 9,500 members and 100 countries around the world. It's you have a part to play as a representative, and you have to take much more of a balanced view. It's not just about what's in passion now in you. I have a few things that I'm really passionate about. One is the sort of the diversity and what we're trying to achieve. This is before I've even had a conversation with any board position. I have a development pathway from student right through to fellow. I want to look at that. Absolutely, and I also want to look at sort of agile sort of philosophy within the organisation. How can we as a membership body, not just on the organisation itself but as a community, how we sort of pivot and change to new ideas, such as wonderful vlogging experts and self-made people that have created some great content. We need to be able to move faster on that, and it's a way of doing that in a balanced way, so we're not championing the wrong content, the wrong people. It's a funny. It's going to be a huge learning curve over the next 3 years for me, and no doubt I'll be able to, within certain realms, write about it. But it's definitely a huge learning.
Well, we'll get you back on for another interview.
Yeah, look back.
Look back.
Grey hair, grey
this time next year.
Yeah.
We will.
Some of the battle scars. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there you go. It's great to have a younger voice on. Which makes a difference, at least, and that's what we're looking at. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Again.
Cheers.
I'm really excited about this because obviously I like to ask everybody what their current favourite book is. And I asked Luke to bring it all the way from Glasgow to London, and he has. So Luke, what is your current favourite book?
It's not my own book. Not the one I wrote myself. Okay, it's a good segue from talking about inspirational women. Actually, I've had in my career I've had some really, really strong female leaders in my life, more actually than men. Actually, the vast majority of my management has been strong females. Maybe I've gravitated towards that myself, perhaps, but it's something that's just become part of my career when I look back. And then also going back to what we talked about breaking in and being proactive. The challenge is you go into a room, it's absolutely terrifying. You go to a conference or a speaking event and there's like 40 people that all look like 40 plus, or in the big conference events there's 400 people. They all look like they know each other, they all look like they know a lot. Everyone's trying to pretend to be a certain way. And how do you navigate through that to create some sort of relationship and then go from there? And I just didn't know how to speak to any of them. And I just literally...
I can't imagine.
Where you start, you have to start, because someone like myself who's candid, sometimes you can sort of wave over saying the wrong thing if you speak as much as you do. I mean, I'm chatting quite freely with you just now, but it's become a sort of muscle memory now in practice of how to behave. And one of the books that I got was straight off of Google, but it ended up being actually one of the best sellers just by chance, is How to Speak to Anyone. It's this lady called Leal.
Oh, okay.
She's fascinating, a American woman who's an entrepreneur in the States in a male-dominated environment, and she provides in this particular book, I believe it's 92 ways of talking to people, which is my Bible.
Is it?
It's I mean, this isn't well read because it's my gift to you. To
Is
have.
it?
Yes.
Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you.
No, it's fine. It's
oh,
you
how
will,
kind.
I know you will appreciate it.
Yeah,
because
I do.
You're just getting into the first few chapters. There's a couple of my favourites. They sort of being a word detective, she says, when you're at parties and conferences and networking. She says everybody wants to talk about themselves. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
And so all you have to do is just sort of attentively listen for the first sort of 3-4 minutes, and you can pick out a word which they subconsciously rolls off their tongue. So for instance, you're stood at a bus stop and you say an opening is like, oh, the weather's bad today, so it's not good for the flowers. Ding, are you into gardening? And do you have your own garden? That sort of thing. It's an opener, and all of a sudden and it teaches you very handy, well-trodden, difficult situations, and to deploy these techniques. I highly recommend it to anybody that's out there that feels like sort of choked up and nervous. Like heavens, I definitely felt like that. And the more I read about her as an individual as well, beyond that, she's a self-made woman, huge entrepreneurial background with sort of just this huge like sales type, male-dominated ego space, and she's just weaved her way through it, and she's achieved that among many other things. I couldn't recommend it more. I'd be interested to see what you think out of it.
How to talk to anyone.
It feels a bit disingenuous when you say it.
No, I love it. Thank you.
It really works.
Thank you so much for gifting this to me. That's
You're welcome.
Very sweet. The first part, and I'm definitely going to read it now.
Yeah,
I think I'm going to read it now. After, well, not now, but yeah. So thank you,
and
guys.
use it on me in the next couple of days. It's not some sort of hypnotic thing, by the way. I don't want it to feel like that. It's just it just takes, when you see these techniques, it just takes the edge off, and you suddenly become much more authentic. You know the questions that you need to ask people, and then it rolls the conversation on.
It's a process. So great. If any of you have read it, do let me know, and do let Luke know what you thought, because that's what it's all about. So another great book to go on the reading list. How awesome is that? Thank you. So where can our Resilience Pod viewers find you?
Like everyone else finds everyone. I'm on LinkedIn. Connected to Rena already, so if you're already connected there, or if you're in the wider world, I'm all over the BCI now, so you can find me. But do reach out to me. I do have one sort of caveat. I don't appreciate, like I'm sure no one does. I'm starting to find a lot more now. A lot of just cold invites with no sort of precursor, having never met them person before. And that's just a small in. And if it's somebody that I know that cold invites me, I tend to go back and say, why is it taking us this long to reach out? And it's like, what? And then we have the conversation. We're going to connect. Let's actually connect. Let's have a conversation. But just catch me on LinkedIn. I'm all over it. LinkedIn All-Star, it says. Is that you a LinkedIn All-Star?
I think so. Yeah. We're all stars. You wanted me to ask you, why not a career in modelling on my visa?
Yeah. Oh, you want to do that stuff?
Yeah.
I can listen on that.
So Luke actually wanted to be a model, didn't he?
Train model, hand model.
Hand model, beard model. You could do a beard model.
Wow,
of
yeah,
thing,
you should see me about. My brother calls me you remember the game Guess Who?
Yes,
It's like
yeah.
a really old sort of game where you have to say, is the person wearing glasses? Is the
Yeah,
person beard?
yeah.
He says I'm a Guess Who character because when I joined the Navy, I had a skinhead, I had like no glasses and no beard, and now I'm incognito now. So
I mean, that was kind of scary if you say that.
I know, very, very different. But no, I did see there's been a couple of times with this, with doing this sort of profile and networking and everything, where I've walked in, particularly for organisations I've worked in. I've walked into a building in London and I've seen my picture on the wall, and I'm okay.
That's weird.
Yeah, and that's sort of as a sort of a junior professional doing well in their organisation.
Yeah.
And I remember when I challenged it to say this feels a bit wrong, I just didn't realise this was a thing. Actually, it was I'd already signed up and said I was happy with it, but I'd just forgotten. So like a couple of years later, I've walked into a building and I see a picture of myself and go, interesting.
So there you go. If he wasn't a resilience expert,
So technically, I'm a model, right? If I've done that. Anyway.
I don't know if one picture counts, but yeah,
I mean,
sure. Yeah, we'll get argue that.
You can take a selfie and become a model. That's
Yeah, so there you go, Luke's secret career. Let him just stick to the...
live the dream. I think I'll go back to my anonymous days.
No, I think he's exposed now. We've got you on the pod, so there is no going back. Anyway, thank you once again for coming on the pod.
Yeah, thank you for doing this as well. This is I genuinely believe in what Rini is doing. I have done for a long time. You're so innovative in what your ideas are, and I say this like when you're not here. Actually, I say that you've got even back in the days when you had that low to no budget space.
Yes,
You sort of the way you look at things. It's very creative, and this is just another example of that. And I recommend anybody that knows me, if she comes out asking to speak to you, get on board, or I'll be having words.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Until next time, see you.